Now, for more on the summit, I'm joined by Juan Carlos Hidalgo, Latin American Policy Analyst from the CATO Institute, just down the street from here. Good to see you again.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much. I'm a bit frustrated, though. This summit is supposed to be a pretty big deal, but a lot of people tell me that it's less relevant than it has been in years past. What's going on?
From all the summits that gather Latin American presidents, and there are plenty of them, you have the Summit of the Americas, you have the Summit of the Latin American and Caribbean states, you have the Regroup Rio, UNASUR, and so on. This is the least important. I mean, no major topic is discussed. The presidents come and pay lip service to issues like education and culture, but beyond that, there are no specific policy proposals.
I'm not the only ones thinking the same thing. A lot of talk and no action. Now, is it possible there could be some action? Actually, let's start with the talk first. We talked about education and innovation. That's something that every country wants to do, but for Latin America, it seems to be more pressing given the economic backdrop that we're looking at this year. Is it something that they could actually move forward on?
Well, improving education is certainly critical for Latin American countries, but it requires domestic reforms. And, you know, like it's hard to figure out how a summit can come forward with strong ideas on how countries should move on education reform.
What would you like to see from the summit? What announcement would you like to see so that you could say, wow, that's good?
Two topics. One of them, for example, is human rights. Let's have a declaration on human rights situation, for example, in Venezuela or Cuba. That's not going to happen for sure, because a lot of these countries sympathize with the Venezuelan regime. The other one, it has to do with drug violence. You know, like drug violence is not, again, in the top of the agenda, particularly in Mexico, the host country. Well, why don't we have a Latin American agreement on the failure of the war on drugs and looking for alternatives to this policy? You know, like you already have Latin American presidents such as Otto Pérez Molina from Guatemala or Juan Manuel Santos from Colombia that have voiced concern about the failure of the war on drugs. Pepe Mujica, the president of Uruguay, he legalized marijuana. He was recently in Mexico claiming that the war on drugs is a failure. Well, let's have a declaration about how Latin Americans want to move forward from these failed policies.
Which, look, ultimately, if you can help solve that crisis, you also help solve the other big problem, which is the economy. Really, I don't want to say it's in serious trouble, but it's certainly in a bit of a stall mode here. What can be done?
Well, the Latin American countries became complacent during the good years of the commodity boom. Now that the commodity prices are going down, you see several Latin American countries facing a deep deceleration. It's hurting. That requires reforms. Unfortunately, the managing director of the IMF was recently in Peru telling Peruvians that they don't need to reform the economy anymore. So it's kind of like counterproductive when you have like foreigners visiting Latin American countries and telling them not to engage in further reforms.
You know what's frustrating is, look, Europe has turned the corner somewhat here, right? It's stabilized. The United States on a path. China is resolving their own issues as well as does the rest of Asia. But Latin America seems to be a little bit of a wild card here. Nobody wants to go out on a limb and say, hey, things are going to get better next year. Can you say that?
No, certainly they won't get better. You need reforms. And unfortunately, besides Mexico, you don't see any other Latin American country moving forward with a reformist agenda.
Juan Carlos Hidalgo, Latin American Policy Analyst, joining us from the CATO Institute. Always good to see you. Thank you very much.